Okay, I rotated till I get the gears where I want them to be at. So we rotate all the way, we shove everything this way. See, all our clearances are that way now. You see the gap over here is pretty thin. And you go the other direction, slide everything that direction the other way. See, this has in-play in it, see? See everything's got clearance in it? And look at our gap here, you can see you got a big gap over here. Before it was pretty close. So we're about 20 thou off at least. So we gotta move it over about 20. It's not as bad as what it was showing by pulling the lid on and off, but we're still pretty close. You know, I always like being more towards second gear than low gear anyway, because you spend a lot of time in second, not a lot in low. The further you engage those dogs, the longer the dogs will live. So we need to move this one over a little bit. Now this one over here, it's a little bit harder to get in there and see. It's a lot harder actually. But so we'll have to play with that a little bit too. So for now I'm going to play with this one over here. The 3-4 one looks like it's fairly close, but I'll have to figure that out when you actually get in there and see. Right now it's hard to see. Okay, so take our tool off. Pull the fork out. Actually, before I do that, got to get this tab up out of here. Chisel. Knock it up a little bit. Knock it up a little further. Okay. So that's how you do it. Make sure you're fully supported when you do that. That's the best you can do. What happened here? There we go. The other option is you put in your vise like this, and you beat it on the vise. I prefer doing it that way, but that's how you would do it over there if you do it. It's just when you do it, you got to make sure that the shaft is completely on both sides supported, so you're not bending it too much. Because if you bend the fork in, it's going to affect your other number. And we might have moved it. We don't know. Now, if we want to make sure it didn't bend it, the way we tell is put it back together and check it. If it moved, we know we bent the fork a little bit, which is always possible. Okay, so right now we're all back together. We're all the way in. So we got about 30 thou maybe on this side. Move everything the other direction. Still see we're a good 50 thou on that side. So the fork moved about 10 thou, I think, by beating on it. It doesn't surprise me. It's just this long piece of steel. It was hitting down here and I was beating on it that way, so things do make a difference. Now this one here is right down here. Hold that tight. 3/4 inch. Yeah, not super tight, but tight. Okay, we want to move the fork this way, so that means we want to move this that way. So we got to take shims out from this side and put them on this side, and that'll move it over. So the nut has an undercut here, so it can go over the shaft. The lock tab has a pin on it. You have to line up. The washers do not. So there's one washer there. It's a pretty thick one, so we're just going to move it. Put that back in there. Put that washer back. Put the two washers that fill out back in there. Put our tab back in there, our lock tab. Rotate around until you get the pin. There it is. And you put your nut on it with the shoulder to the inside. And goes back in. You tighten it up. And I give Tatro torque on that, which is a little bit more than they had. It was still pretty tight though. Okay, now we put it back in with kit tranny and see what we did. It'll be a big move. Okay. Right off the bat, it looks a lot better. You can't go by that. You got to take all your clearances up. Okay, so right now, you see we're a lot closer to low gear, to second gear than it was before. See the big, now the gaps on low gear side, see? Quite a bit of gap there. You gotta remember the gap is at the top corner, not the bottom. The fork is tapered, so don't look at the bottom, look at the top up here. Okay, so you go like that. You can see the gap right here is about the thickness for a blade. You go like that and see the thickness, it's a little bit thinner than the blade. So it's a little bit closer to there, but not by a lot. So I'm alright with it being offset that direction. I like being more towards second anyway. It's probably about 5 thou too far. So those shims that were on the other side are different thicknesses. We have to measure the shims and we can move it back. That thick one we took out is probably a 15 or a 20. So instead of moving that much, we could have moved it, 5 or 10, depending on what those shims were. So anyway, I'm alright with that. I like that one, so I'm going to live with it. So I always like being more toward second, and I like being more toward high on this side. Now over here, it's going to be a lot harder to get in here because you can't see in there. It's very difficult. I definitely can't do it by looking at the camera. But you got to do the same thing. You got to find the end of the, you got to line up your dog, look at it, take all your clearance out, then rotate the other way and do the same thing. And there ain't no way I can do that with a camera. I can barely do it without a camera. So, definitely need light. Mandatory light. First thing I do is get the third gear to line up where I can even see where the dog is at. Right now the gear is moving with me, so that's not helping. Okay. Okay, the dog is tapered like the second gear was, so I got the two lined up. I make sure I got the sharp edge over the flat spot so you can see the gap right there. I don't care about the other gap. It's only right where the high spot is. So that is right in there. Put more light on it, you can see in there maybe. If you look at it, it's pretty close in there. See how close it is? It's really close to that gear. So then we can go on the other side over here, and there we go. We gotta look at this side. And I didn't move it over that side yet, so we know it was like low gear over here. It was real close to it. So it means we're gonna probably have to move it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take all the gap the other direction and see what we got on that side. So I gotta do the same thing. I gotta line up the dog so that it lines up where I can see it. See which way the gear is pointed. Right there is a good spot. Okay, everything's moved over with a screwdriver. Okay, let me come in and look at it. Ooh. So if you look in there, see the gap in there. Dog, you see how close it is. So this one here, get it where I can see where we at here. Gotta figure where the high and low is at. Okay, looks like we got a little bit more clearance on that side, right there. I don't know if you can see the clearances in there or not, but we do have more clearance on the high gear than low gear, than in third gear. Okay, so it's about the same amount of air on both sides. So it looks like this whole thing was in a different location before. You know, they're both moved over. So I'm going to go here and do the same thing I did on this one. I'm going to move it over that same amount and see if that corrects the problem. Now, if you're going to use feeler gauges to do all this, make sure you put the gauges in with it all the one way. Make sure the high spots are lined up on the dogs, and put the gauges in there until they won't fit no more. If you want to use drill bits, you can use drill bits. Go in there until it gets tight, then that's your number. Move it all the way the other direction, do the same thing. If both those two numbers are the same, you're good. If they're different, subtract half of what the air is. So if it's 20 thou bigger here than here, that's a 10 thou offset change. Makes it centered. I'm pretty good with my eyeballs, so I just do eyeballing it, but sometimes it's easier to put hard numbers in there. You go right to what you want the first time instead of dealing with it. Now right now, the fork don't want to come out because I'm in the wrong spot. Move it over, it pops right out. This time I'm going to hold it real tight to the edge of the fork. I'm going to knock this tab up here a little bit. I can't see what I'm doing now. Get that up in the air a little bit. And bend it up with this. Until I'm hitting it pretty hard, it's going to make it move. So it takes a little effort. Damn, airline way on the floor there. Back up a little bit, you can see better maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, now you bring it up a little higher. Piece of metal floating around there for some reason. Okay, let's see how tight this one was. That was not tight at all. That's not very good when the wrench just kind of falls on its own. It's not a good sign. Okay, now this time we are on the opposite side. So we want to take shims out of this side and add them to the other side. So it's reversed. Because this one's in a different direction. So there's your nut. There's your lock. Pull that out. Pull all your shims off. So here's your stack of shims. They look like they're about the same. You can actually measure them though. Looks like they're probably 15s would be my guessing. 16 on that one, 16 on that one. So they're rusty 15s. I'm going to take one out, put on the other side. That's going to be a big change. Washer up on there, line up your titty, wherever the titty's at. I just rotate until I find a titty. I don't know where it's at right now. I guess I could look over and look, but yeah, it's right down there. And you put your nut on there. And this time we're going to actually tighten it down. That's pretty tight. You want to know how tight that is? It's tight. When you feel a nut try stretching so much, but you still stretch and stop. Okay, you put your fork back in over here. Put your shaft in. The correct direction would help. Go all the way across. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing again. There we go. We can go there and figure out where we're at again. Alright, so let's go do third gear. Which gear is close to anything over here? Pretty close right there. Ooh, bright. Okay, I am close to third gear right now. So So that'd be on the inside one over here. So you're looking down in there, and I'm not sure if I can get the light, get up higher with the camera. I don't know if you can see in there or not. I'm trying to see through the camera and I can't tell what I'm looking at. Gotta get right, just in the right spot to see it. Right there's the gap right there, see it? Get the light just right. So looks like we got gaps actually over on this side. Oh yeah, here. There's my gap right down there, see it? Looks like I got about a good blade, screwdriver blade worth in there. Now I got to rotate the gear over on the other side and see where we're at. Just like before. Okay, so it's time to rotate this around to here. Both sides of the gears are tapered on the other side, so it's harder to tell exactly where we're at. We're definitely close to high gear now. So there's the, right down in there is where we're looking. The gap right in there, hard to tell. Looks like it's touching the camera, but it's not. There's a gap in there, but the camera looks like it shows it touching, but it's not touching. So anyway, there you go. We're really close. Okay, I gotta look at that again. I'm definitely a little bit closer to high gear than low gear. I mean, in third gear, just like on the other side, we are closer to high. But that's okay. I kind of like that myself. So. Okay, so I'm gonna move that over. Looks like a good 30 thou clearance in there, which is all good. There we go, over here. It looks pretty centered to me. About 30 on both. There's a lot of slop in there. So reshoot it back in there and see if you can see the gap. So there's our fork. It's hard to put it. We can actually see in there. It's hard to get the camera in there and the light in there and the right angle to see squat. And the gap's right in there, but I'm not sure what gap you're really seeing. Oh, that's too far. I don't know. It doesn't look really good in the camera to see in there, but my eyeballs, it looks good. So the other way, damn, keep blinding myself with the light off the reflection there. So if you move it all the way the other direction here, there's a bunch of movement when you do that. Actually, the other gear's right there lined up. You can see it. Right there, you should be able to see it. See the reflection? That's the gap there. It's hard to see it, but there's a gap. Alright, so I'm happy with that. So it looks like it's pretty well centered there. We have a lot of slop and everything, but it looks centered. This one here, we got a lot of, you can see how much slop you got here too, but I think it's got at least that, if not more, in the high gear. So, alright, I'm good with that. So that was a lot of work for a little gain. Actually gained quite a bit because it was off a lot. Okay, so here you go. So let me get, I'll button this all back up. So I'm going to cut it right here.